Tottenham have been on a massive decline since 2019, and the one common denominator is still here. Spurs and ENIC will tell you that they are working on big things. They want Spurs to be competing on all four fronts. They're going to invest money into the club to try and get us to that top level. But please don't believe a word that this board says to you. This is it for most people now. Spurs fans need to wake up to what's really going on. If you actually look back at the last 6 or 7 years under ENIC, since they started building that stadium and saying that was going to push us on to bigger things. In fact, we've regressed every single season since that has been built. And that is no exaggeration. This is not just me just trying to beat on ENIC every 5 minutes, and I know a lot of you are getting bored of hearing it, but I just think it's really important to understand what they're actually doing to this club, because we're in serious threat of relegation now. Serious threat. I don't even think now that it's a question that we'll be dragged into that relegation battle, especially if we keep Thomas Frank. Now listen to the contradictions over the years that we've heard. Now, we had Pochettino obviously in 2014-15 up until 2019, and he was consistently getting top four. He was getting us to cup finals, cup semi-finals, competing on all four fronts. Remember that, competing on all four fronts. Gets to a Champions League final. But in between that, he wasn't back for 3 transfer windows. So ENIC has this manager that's competing for Premier Leagues, competing for Champions League, competing for cups. And they decide, we're not going to back you for 3 seasons. In fact, we're not going to back you because we're going to build this shiny new stadium. And it's about the future of the club. That's what the narrative they tried to spin to you. Then all of a sudden, players started to decline. Poch even screamed out and said, we need a painful rebuild. We need to start signing players. We need, and he did this 2 years prior to being sacked. He was begging for transfers, basically, and he was getting no backing at all from this board. They ended up sacking him, spreading this narrative, and the fans started spreading it too, to say he couldn't get over the line. We need a manager that can get over the line. Fair enough. So then we brought Jose Mourinho in. Jose Mourinho comes in, and he's a win now manager. He's here for guaranteed trophies. We're going to back him. We're going to do this. Didn't back him either, by the way. And Jose Mourinho gets to a cup final. He's the guy we brought in to win cups, remember? That was the narrative. 5 days before they sacked him. If they really cared about winning a trophy, they wouldn't have sacked a win now trophy manager 5 days before a final. It makes no sense whatsoever. And then from Jose Mourinho, we went to Nuno. Very, very pragmatic manager who was only here for a few months, and I don't think he got a fair crack at the whip, but fans were fed up with him very quickly. The board sacked him, saying he was too boring. So then we bring in Conte, win now manager again. We want to win trophies, want to challenge for Premier Leagues. We got all that narrative again. Conte dragged a half-decent Spurs side to 4th, beating Arsenal to 4th in the Premier League, playing some pretty decent football, by the way. It wasn't boring like people think it was. I remember the 3-0 victory at Arsenal, the old White Hart Lane. It wasn't the old White Hart Lane, but you know what I mean. And we played very good football that day. Sonny and Kane was exceptional. Ended up 4th in the Premier League. Summer comes, didn't get backed again. Didn't get backed with the players that he wanted. He even calls it out to everybody. Spurs are not ambitious. Spurs don't want to win things. It's okay for Spurs to lose games here. There's no ambition from the board. Conte told us all. He told us the truth. He told us what was going on. We didn't really want to listen. So they made a narrative that the football was too boring. We needed to get our Tottenham back. So we bring in Ange Postecoglou. Ange Postecoglou comes in, playing superior football. We were top of the league after 10 games, won 8 out of 10, I don't think we even lost a game in those 10 games. And Spurs were absolutely flying. Obviously, an injury crisis ruined that season and started falling down the table. Ended up finishing 5th anyway. Pretty decent season, playing attacking football, but the narrative's already started creeping in. Oh, he doesn't know how to defend. He's inept. He's naive. All this sort of stuff came in. Then the next season comes in. started off pretty well, in my opinion, smashing Manchester City 4-0, smashing Aston Villa 4-1, beating Man United 3-0 at Old Trafford, and it could have been at least 7-0. Really playing some good football. Then another tragic injury crisis happens, and Ange Postecoglou decides to go for the Europa League because he knows he hasn't got a squad strong enough, because again, he wasn't backed by ENIC. They gave him a group of kids and Solanke. Now, he didn't have the players that Frank has got at the moment, but he went on to get a Europa League trophy. First European trophy in 41 years. First trophy in 17 years. And you know what the board have done? After they signed him with kids, instead of actually backing him to go for a third season and see what he could do, because remember, he got fifth on his first season, and then in the second season he won a trophy. But they wouldn't give him season 3. Instead, what they did was they thought, you've won a trophy, but we need a more pragmatic manager. Remember, just a few managers ago, we had a pragmatic manager, but the board will tell you that they wanted an attacking, we want Tottenham back. Do you remember that? But now they've gone back to a pragmatic manager because they said they want to compete on all 4 fronts. Now, we have a manager, Thomas Frank, where, in my opinion, should not be managing this football club. But we're not competing in all 4 fronts. We didn't even compete in any fronts. We went out of both cups very, very early. We're 14th in the Premier League and not competing near the top whatsoever. And we're actually doing all right in the Champions League somehow, but we've had a very, very good draw there and playing some weaker sides. So we've been lucky in that aspect. But again, very, very dull football, losing week in, week out. The worst home form in the league, 19th in the form guide. With 8 points from relegation, we're literally 3 points from 17th again, but he's not being sacked. So why was all this gaslighting telling us that we needed to be competing in all 4 fronts, sacking Ange Postecoglou for the very same reason, but not sacking Frank? It makes 0 sense. All they do is they do the same thing every year, but change the manager and change the narrative. They're doing the same thing. Please stop falling for this bullshit that they keep spinning us. It's the same. They'll bring in the next manager now, and they'll say what they're going to bring in. They're going to change the narrative to we need an attacking, more winnable manager. They'll do the same thing again. We need a manager that wins, gets the players on side, gets them playing some better football. But they won't back that guy either. I promise you, they won't back him. And then what will happen is after a year or so, they'll say, well, he's not doing it. He's not getting us in the top 4. He's not winning us a trophy, or whatever narrative they want to spin. And then they'll sack that guy too. And it'll go on and on and on and on. I don't believe Frank should be manager of this club. Not many fans do now. And I tried to back him. I looked at all the positives that he could bring, but he's not bringing anything that I thought he could bring. I thought, the counter-attacking football would be better. I thought the transition from defence to attack would be better. I thought we'd be more solid at the back, but we're not. We're just as bad at the back as it was last season. So the reason probably why we're not conceding as many goals is because we're a lot more pragmatic and not really attacking at all. I'd say we've had some good halves here and there, but that's not good enough, especially if these good halves are against teams that are all fighting for relegation to not be relegated this year. So, we drawn with Wolves, lost to West Ham, lost to Bournemouth, lost to drew with Burnley, lost to Nottingham Forest. They're all round the bottom of the league. And what have ENIC done to back Frank? Nothing. Nothing in this window. In fact, we sold our top goal scorer from last season and replaced him with a box-to-box midfielder. And we've bought a left-back that we're going to be putting out on loan. So again, they haven't backed the manager. They've spun it that we want to compete on all 4 fronts. They've told us that they're going to inject 100 million in January to improve the squad. Haven't done that either. They've lied consistently. They're bringing an ex-Arsenal man as a CEO for a start, which I don't like. You've got Langer that's in charge of recruitment now, because our guy that was in charge of transfers told us all he was leaving on the first day of the transfer window when he's supposed to be in charge of all our transfers. Now he's doing absolutely zero. So that's a shambles in itself. Then you've got Langer in charge, who literally was in charge of Villa when they were 17th. As soon as they got rid of him, they ended up now 3rd in the Premier League. So he needs to go as well. We've got nobody good in the backroom staff. I don't think anybody above Frank is doing their job properly. The scouting is horrendous. There's this is all one common denominator, and that's Enoch. And I know people are sick to death of hearing this, but how much more facts and proof do I have to show you and tell you that they are the problem? They've got a really bad manager at the moment, and they're not sacking him because they don't want to look bad for hiring him in the first place. They sacked a trophy winning manager for this guy. Honestly, if we kept Ange for season 3, we would be doing a lot better. I'm telling you, we would. Yes, we've got shed loads of injuries. I understand that. But we've got a much bigger squad than last season as well. Plus, we've kept majority of our defence fit this season. Van der Ven, Romero has been fit for most of it. You know, your doggy hasn't been that fit, but Poe has been fit all the time. Vicario has been fit all the time. You know, we've replaced Madison with Xavi, so there shouldn't be no excuses there, really. We bring Kudos in, so that he's been playing for the majority of the season before he got injured. You know, Paulinho came in as well. He's got Mawani, but he's been terrible. You know, he's not playing Tell, and Tell's been all right this season when he has played. It's a shambles, and I promise you, it won't matter. If I don't think Frank should be here. And I do think if we bring in another manager with the squad that we have, we could do a bit better. We could definitely do better with this squad that we have. I don't think this squad is as bad as what it's looking at the moment. You only have to look at Man United at the moment. They sacked Amorim, bring in Michael Carrick, who is literally a championship manager, but Man United looked 10 times better because the players weren't as bad as what people thought. We do need a manager bounce. We do need to go up this table. Keeping Frank, I promise you, we will end up in a relegation battle. And Enoch are doing nothing to help him. Absolutely nothing. Zero. They're doing nothing. Our net spend is like 2 million. I think we sold Valise for 10 million as well, by the way, and bought Salza for 13 million. So we've got a net spend of 3 million in the transfer window, where we've got mass amount of injuries. We're 14th in the league. We're 8 points away from relegation. Enoch are sitting on their hands. Now, what they'll do now is they'll use the narrative of, oh, we didn't want to back Frank in case we sacked him. And then if we sack Frank, they'll say, well, we didn't want to back the interim manager because he's not going to be here for long. So basically, this is all revolved around not spending money. That's what they want to do. And even if they did spend money, would you trust Lango and Pauachichi to get it right? Because I wouldn't trust them either. So we're in a hole at the moment, but the main culprit for this whole thing for the last 25 years has been Enoch. We've been on a massive decline since that stadium's been built, by the way, because that stadium wasn't built for football purposes. That stadium was built for non-football purposes, and they want to make as much money as possible off those non-football events, and that is their prerogative. That is their main ambition. I promise you. If you don't believe what I'm saying, please just look at the history of Enoch and look at the decline since that stadium's been built. It all falls into one. Listen to all the narratives and lies that they spread and tell you, and they come on to the TV and they tell you this, that, and the other. Nothing's ever matched for what they're saying, ever. It never is. Please try to wake up, please. Like, if you don't want to believe me, please do your own research and have a look into it yourself. Thank you for watching. Come on, you Spurs.